Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm excited to have you here today. We're about to explore the fascinating world of the invisible forces that shape how organizations think, act, and ultimately succeed. The title of our presentation is The Unseen Architect: How Organizational Culture Develops. Over the next few slides, we'll uncover what truly influences organizational behavior and success beyond the surface. So let's get started and dive into how these unseen forces work behind the scenes to build powerful cultures within organizations. When we talk about organizational culture, we're really referring to those unwritten rules that everyone seems to follow, even if they're not officially documented. These are the shared stories, the traditions, and the collective outlook that shape how people behave and interact within the company. Think of it as a kind of social glue, something that goes beyond formal policies and procedures. It influences how employees communicate, how decisions are made, and how daily work is approached. This unspoken set of rules, or the unspoken, as we might call it, dictates much of the everyday interactions. It shapes the way team members collaborate and how they handle challenges. Decision-making, in this context, isn't just about following a process. It's about the shared mindsets and core values that influence what's considered right or wrong, acceptable or not. These underlying beliefs give the company its unique personality, its character, if you will. So, understanding organizational culture is key, because it's the foundation that defines how a company truly feels from the inside out. It impacts everything from individual behavior to overall company performance, making it a crucial element of organizational success. Let's talk about how culture really begins. It all starts with the underlying assumptions and values that members of a company hold. These are often unwritten, but they have a profound influence on how everyone operates day to day. These beliefs quietly guide our practices, from hearing decisions to how we treat each other. They shape the overall environment and set the tone for everything else. So, in essence, the foundation of a strong organizational culture is built on shared values and beliefs. When these are clear and aligned, they create a cohesive and positive workplace. Understanding this helps us see how deeply culture influences our behaviors and decisions, often in ways we might not even realize. On this slide, we're focusing on how Ireland's leadership truly exemplifies the power of purposeful action during Ireland's energy transition. When leaders demonstrate a clear sense of purpose, it sets the tone for the entire organization. This purpose isn't just a statement on paper, it's modeled from the very top through actions, communication, and decision-making. What leaders do and how they communicate ripple throughout the company, guiding employees and shaping the culture. When leadership is consistent and authentic, it fosters a culture of high performance and accountability. This means everyone understands what's expected and feels responsible for contributing to the shared goals. Think of leadership as the architects of culture. They are not just making decisions, they are setting the tone, establishing the standards, and inspiring others to follow. This deliberate shaping of culture ensures that the organization moves cohesively toward its vision, especially during such a pivotal time of transition. So, in essence, strong leadership with a clear purpose creates a powerful, unified culture that drives performance and accountability across the entire organization. Sustainable culture change really hinges on a few key elements. First, we need clarity of vision, knowing exactly what kind of culture we want to create. Without that clear direction, it's hard to build momentum. Next, it's essential to have broad organizational commitment. Everyone, from leadership to frontline employees, needs to be on board and aligned. And finally, we must genuinely invest in making each employee feel like they belong and truly matter. When people feel valued, they're more engaged and willing to embrace change. To make this happen, we should engage stakeholders early on and secure their commitment. Getting buy-in from key players helps ensure everyone is working toward the same goal. And of course, prioritizing inclusion isn't just a nice-to-have, it's fundamental. We want every employee to feel that they matter and belong, which fosters a sense of trust and connection. Fostering belonging is about creating an environment where everyone feels safe and supported. This aligns closely with our overall goal of building a positive, inclusive culture. We also need to align our core values with specific target behaviors, ensuring that what we stand for is reflected in everyday actions. Defining our culture means clearly articulating what we stand for, what behaviors we expect, and what kind of environment we want to foster. And when we look at the building blocks for culture development, it's about putting these strategies into action, making them concrete and measurable to sustain positive change over the long term. All of these elements are interconnected, driving us toward a thriving, sustainable culture that supports our overall vision. Our grid's rapid workforce expansion serves as a powerful reminder that maintaining cultural integrity requires active effort, especially during periods of high growth. When organizations grow quickly, their culture is put under a lot of pressure. The values and norms that once worked smoothly for a smaller team of 50 can start to break down when the team expands to 500 or more. It's crucial to understand that culture isn't something you can just assume will carry on automatically. Instead, it needs to be intentionally nurtured and reinforced. This is where trust, shared purpose, and consistent performance standards come into play. As the organization scales, these elements can become strained unless we make a deliberate effort to uphold them. Growth challenges like this highlight the importance of staying vigilant and proactive in maintaining our core values, ensuring that as we expand, our culture remains strong and aligned with our overall goals. Creating intentional space for shared stories is really about bringing to light the invisible layer of culture that often goes unnoticed. When we do this, it helps us make the culture more tangible, more real, and ultimately easier to understand and influence. By surfacing these stories and experiences, we can foster genuine buy-in across the organization. Think about unspoken rules, shared stories, the collective mindset, and the lived experiences of employees. These are all parts of the culture you feel but might not immediately read about or see in formal documents. They form what we call the invisible layer of culture. On the other hand, there's the visible layer, which includes things like mission statements, stated values, the physical workspace design, and formal policies. These are the aspects of culture we can see and point to directly. They're more tangible and easier to communicate. When we look at these two layers together, the visible and the invisible, we get a full picture of organizational culture. And understanding both helps us create more intentional strategies for shaping and reinforcing that culture. So, by paying attention to both what's seen and what's felt, we can really deepen our impact and foster a more authentic, shared sense of purpose. Culture is never done. It's an ongoing journey that requires continuous, intentional effort. You can't set it and forget it. Instead, you need to actively work to sustain, adapt, and strengthen your culture over time. First, we need to assess where we stand. This means measuring and understanding our current cultural reality. Tools like Gallup Q12 and Culture Amp surveys are incredibly useful because they give us concrete insights into employee engagement and cultural strengths. Focus groups can also provide deeper context and real stories from the team. Next, it's about diagnosing the gaps. We compare where we are to where we want to be. Using proven frameworks like SWOT analysis or McKinsey's 7S model helps us identify specific areas for improvement or change. Finally, once we know the gaps, we evolve. This involves being intentional about making adjustments, implementing new initiatives, and continuously monitoring progress. Remember, building a strong culture is a dynamic process. It's never static, but always moving forward. Let's talk about culture, because it's one of the hardest advantages to copy. When you build a strong culture, it becomes a lasting differentiator for your organization. One of the biggest benefits is belonging and purpose. When employees feel they belong and understand the purpose of their work, it dramatically reduces attrition. In fact, companies with a strong culture see turnover drop by about 50%. And that translates into a real competitive edge. High-culture organizations don't just retain talent, they see measurable improvements in performance and output. We're talking about a productivity gain of roughly 30%. Plus, employees in organizations with a strong culture tend to be more engaged and satisfied. Engagement levels are 4 times higher, which means they're more committed and motivated day to day. So, in summary, cultivating a strong culture isn't just a feel-good factor. It has a profound impact, reducing turnover, boosting productivity, and creating a more engaged workforce. That's the power of a strong culture, and why it's such a critical competitive advantage. Now, let's talk about adaptability. Strong cultures aren't static. They evolve over time, but they do so without losing their core identity. It's this balance that allows organizations to grow while staying true to what makes them unique. Next, we see that alignment is key between culture, people, and strategy. When these elements are in sync, they create a powerful engine that fuels both performance and well-being across the organization. It's also important to remember that intentional development and consistent maintenance are crucial. You can't just set your culture and forget it. Sustainable growth depends on actively nurturing and shaping it over time. Finally, organizational culture is like an invisible force. It influences every decision, every action, from daily routines to long-term strategic planning. And because it's so influential, it can't be left to chance. It needs to be deliberately cultivated because it really is the engine driving organizational success. So, in summary, culture isn't just a nice-to-have. It's the foundation that propels organizations forward. It's what keeps everything aligned, purposeful, and resilient in the face of change.